welcome. This is the first of 2 listening sessions that the City Council is going to have on Takoma Junction redevelopment. The second one will be Tuesday, February 3rd at 7 o'clock, so that's another opportunity for people who can't make it this evening to come and let us know what they think. And one other thing that I want to remind people of is that if you have comments that you want to get to the entire City Council and have them put in the record, you can just send an email to clerk@tacomaparkmd.gov, and the clerk compiles those comments and makes copies available to the entire City Council. So if you don't want to put in 7 email addresses and then get one wrong and go, oops, and the important piece about the clerk is the city clerk gets that, puts it in the record, so we've got it. If I've noticed today, I've been getting some things that are either to me or me and a council member or a couple council members, and then the question is always, gee, do we forward this? Did they get it? Was I blind copied? So it's much easier to just send it to clerk@tacomaparkmd.gov.
And she also makes hard copies for us.
So with that bit of information, what we're going to do this evening is listen to your comments. We invite you to come to the podium to identify yourself. We'll keep track of who speaks. And if you can keep your comments to 3 minutes for anybody who hasn't been here before, there's a timer and lights on the podium. And there's a 30-second warning with a single beep. And then when the 3 minutes are up, there's a couple of beeps. And so if you can wrap up your comments in 3 minutes, we'd really appreciate it. That gives everybody a chance to talk, and we're not here till midnight. So we didn't have a sign up for this, but just figured people can get in line at the podium. You don't have to string it back for, 15 people waiting. You can just get up a couple at a time and wait your turn, or come down to the front here where there's some empty chairs and then just be ready to get up. No need to wear yourself out standing in line unless you want to talk to the person who's already in line. You want to stand behind them and talk to them, but just do it quietly. So with that, we will open the listening session, and anybody who wants to speak, please come to the podium and identify yourself. And thank you all for coming.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kate Finberg. I live on Ethan Allen Avenue, and I just wanted to come out tonight to show my support for revitalizing the Junction area. I'm excited about that prospect, and as someone who lives on the street, we're aware of traffic and all of those other concerns that I know some people have raised. But I know that there are ways of working around that, and it looks to me like a lot of the proposals take that into consideration. I think it would just really, it would be a great way to improve our side of the town, I guess, improve and reinvigorate. I would like to be able to have more local businesses that we can walk to. For a lot of my neighbors, I know that's something that the downtown part is an area we can walk to, but it's a little further than we can always go to, so having something closer. So we're excited at that prospect. We think it would bring more people into the area as well. This is a wonderful community. We're happy we're here. There's a lot of folks on our street and around us that are young families, and we're really supportive of seeing some development there. So we're excited about that. We thank the council for considering that and the work that you all are doing, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Matt Hurston, the president of the board of the Ability Project, and I just wanted to speak briefly to clear up a few items regarding our proposal. The first is in response to Councilman Grimes' comment at the last hearing that it was unfathomable that we would delete the residential, and we'd just like to clarify that it is indeed fathomable. That we deleted the. Sure, I said to me. Okay. We deleted the residential in order to demonstrate flexibility. We did perceive in public comment after the public comment period opened that there was concern about how precious the parking is and that uses would gobble up limited parking. There was also issues of traffic congestion at the corner. Because residential is not an essential part of our program, we deleted it. We would be very happy to have the opportunity, if that's something that the council finds as a priority, that it could be restored to our proposal. The second is to set the record straight to the extent it can be regarding our interest in collaborating with the co-op and the issues surrounding the continuity of operations during a phased construction process. And we and our team did go to the length of devising a very specific phased plan that would provide for the unrestricted, continuous access to loading and parking that would be necessary to keep the co-op in full and normal operations during a construction process. And we would be happy to lay that out for anyone as well. And finally, a comment a week or two ago regarding the need to preserve ground level street frontage for retail uses, with which we would concur. The Ability Project is in more need of that central location rather than having a ground floor retail access. And in fact, in our May 2014 proposal, had the Ability Project located on the second floor of the project with a simple, small retail presence for a coffee shop that we would operate. So we can be accommodated second floor, we can be accommodated in the back off a parking lot, and we do not need to occupy some very valuable ground floor retail space. So we just wanted to set those three items straight and look forward to continued dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you. And one thing I neglected to mention at the beginning, Councilmember Kate Stewart is not here this evening. She is not available, but she will be reviewing the video. So just want to make sure people know that.
Hello, my name is Pam Matson, and I live on Lincoln Avenue in Takoma Park, and I've lived in Takoma Park for 14 years. And I'd like to thank the council for the opportunity for you hearing what we have to say on this important issue that I think is affecting our city. I think that we have a very unique and critical opportunity to create a vibrant community space up at the Junction. In particular, one thing that's important to me is that it's a major adolescent thoroughfare, and I think it has been for quite some time. And so many kids come through that space, and I think that we can provide for them a really positive space to congregate. I think walkability is a core value of our community, and I know personally that we shop up at the co-op once, twice a week minimally. And the reason for that is because it is walkable and it's close, and that we personally, our family believes in spending our money in Takoma Park first. And so the more opportunity we have to do that, I think, is one that we should not pass up. So I guess to be clear, I'm for additional retail space at the Junction and for moving forward with the existing RFP process to keep moving forward with the proposals. My hope is that through working with the developers, that a comprehensive plan looking at the area can address some of the challenges that we already face and that are concerns moving forward with the development, like parking and traffic. But I think that they're all addressable and that they're outweighed by the opportunity, again, we have to create a vibrant community retail space. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Laura Barclay. I'm representing the Old Takoma Business Association this evening, and I'm going to read a prepared statement by our Board of Directors. The Old Takoma Business Association supports development at the Takoma Junction that maintains and builds upon the unique historic assets of the area, increases the economic viability of the businesses, both existing and new, and is sustainable for long-term growth of the neighborhood and its businesses. We encourage ongoing dialogue between all stakeholders to determine an acceptable plan to proceed. We affirm that a development that satisfies the above criteria will be more beneficial to the community and its local businesses than maintaining the status quo. I'd like to add to that, as a resident of Ward 3, I live on Lincoln Avenue. I'd like to personally echo this statement, and I'd just like to strongly emphasize the need for, I personally feel that development that includes retail is imperative to the success of any development project at the Junction. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Colleen Cordis, and I'm here for the Tree Commission. And this is a statement that we also gave to Jesse, the city clerk, but just wanted to present it to you here.
We have the printed copy.
Good. So as you consider proposals for further developing the city-owned parking lot, the Tree Commission urges you to choose an option that protects, preserves, and enhances the natural wooded area on the back hill, and to consider expanding that natural area in keeping with the city's sustainable Maryland leadership. Preserving, enhancing, and even expanding the natural area at this site would be a prominent demonstration of the city's strong commitment to protecting and expanding our tree canopy. At this time when other development projects, the changing climate, PEPCO's maintenance of its lines, invasive non-native plants, a lack of mulching, and other stresses are seriously reducing the size and health of the canopy, as I know we all know. Preserving our tree canopy has many well-known environmental, energy, and quality of life benefits. These include storm water management, carbon sequestration, erosion control, wildlife support, heat island mitigation, and aesthetic enjoyment for residents of all ages. The positive example of the city acting to protect this natural area could encourage other jurisdictions to also prioritize sustainability when they weigh their development options. Your very public positive example could inspire our own residents to take action to preserve the trees on their private property as well. It is essential to encourage such private action, but example really is the best teacher. By contrast, a decision by the city that allows impingement on this wooded natural area would communicate lack of commitment to long-term sustainability goals. It could discourage residents from treating our declining tree canopy with the urgency it requires. In our experience, residents are keenly interested in whether the city follows its own recommendations in terms of caring for trees on city property. Whatever final plan is developed for the city-owned parking lot, we support a careful consideration of whether and how the existing natural area could be better maintained, including, for example, the creation of rain gardens for better storm water management and erosion control, or the addition of fencing to reduce grazing by deer. We're interested in being part of that larger conversation, and we thank you so much for considering our recommendations. I'm speaking for Gresham Lowe, Carol Houghton, Mel Fosnod, and myself, all members of the Tree Commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Roland Weiss. I live at 44 Columbia, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm only speaking for myself here. There's a variety of opinions, in the neighborhood. Personally, I am also excited about seeing the Junction revitalized, having lived in that area for 30 years. I value having the co-op in the Junction, and I prefer a modest-sized development, 1 to 2 stories. Like many, I was disappointed at the initial presentations by the finalists and expressed that to the council. However, over time, I saw an evolution of several of the finalists, starting with the responses to the questions and then going to the one-on-one session in November. I saw that change both in their design concepts and their openness to community input. It's a lot different when you can just sit across from somebody, while they're sketching opportunities versus this kind of format. The response varied from some change to a whole lot of change. So I saw, that flexibility there. Now, I might be wrong about that, so I think it's important that as part of your due diligence, you kind of check their references with previous developments to see whether those communities are positive. I did think that one finalist, specifically Community 3, seemed unwilling to make any changes to their concept at all. And that was the impression of a couple other people that I touched base with. So I would suggest dropping them from further consideration. I think that's really important that you need somebody who's going to be flexible.
Okay.
I want the project to be done, but I also want it to be done well. I think to do that, I think the project needs to be driven by a competent and experienced design and construction team. I haven't worked on a construction project, but I'm an engineer and a manager by training. I've participated in and managed various other kinds of technical projects, not construction, including projects for state and local government. I found that it often ends very badly for all parties if you don't have an experienced team with all of the different skills you need to do that kind of work leading the project. I'd also have reservations about the city undertaking this project on its own, just given its financial situation. You don't really have the right staff. As it is, I think you're going to need a consultant to just oversee what's going on. So I think that's probably risky too. So on balance, where we are now, I would be in favor of continuing the current process. Thank you.
Good idea.
Thank you.
Just to hire a construction manager. I mean, I know how that could work.
Good evening. I'm Susan West Montgomery. I live at 10 Philadelphia Avenue. Been a resident in Takoma Park for 23 years and a proud 3-digit member number of the co-op. But I'm also a former chairman of the board of the Takoma Children's School. My children have grown up in this area, and I'm very keenly concerned about making sure the really important institutions in both our child care and our co-op and all of the important features of this plan are respected. And I'm joined here by
Carter Doherty.
Jenny Evans-Muir, Hilton Avenue.
Neil Cohen, Columbia Avenue.
And I'm reading a statement on behalf of all of us. We're here to talk about the importance today of our preschools. Everyone here was or is heavily involved with Takoma Park's preschools, from the Purple School to, as Susan mentioned, the Takoma Children's School to the Takoma Park Child Development Center. We are aware that a preschool could become part of a new Takoma Junction development. Put simply, our preschools help build community, and they should be treasured as much as any other community institution. Working to make our preschools a great place for early childhood education was among the more exhausting things each of us has done, but it was also one of the most rewarding. We've hired executive directors, we've vetted teachers, we calmed anxious parents, and we've prepared budgets. But we also met some great neighbors who are now great friends in the process. Anyone who claims to be the heart of our community should also look at our preschools. We have walked through fires together, such episodes including broken furnaces, sudden resignations, fundraising, lots and lots of fundraising, parent cleanup days, board meetings at the schools, and more informal ones over beers at Olive Lounge. There were times when all of this felt like drama that was really not necessary and sometimes even absurd, but it was well worth it. We think our children will come to appreciate that as well. We support the council moving ahead with the process that it started a year ago and choosing a developer who can help revitalize Takoma Junction. Further out, we ask that you keep all Takoma Park preschools in mind as you make additional decisions about the future of the area. Thank you.
Thanks. And
Are you advocating specifically for a preschool location without naming a particular one in Takoma Junction in the developed area?
I missed the beginning of the question, I'm sorry.
Are you advocating specifically the inclusion of a preschool in the Takoma Junction development?
We're asking that that option continue to be included, yes.
All right, thanks.
And I didn't catch your name.
Jenny Evans-Muir, Hilton Avenue.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Carter Doherty, 6 Crescent Place, Ward 1. You've been asked repeatedly to fulfill the spirit of the Takoma Junction Task Force, and I'm pleased to report that you can do so by continuing with the RFP and the 4 finalists. And that is not according to me, by the way, that is according to a majority of the members of the Takoma Junction Task Force. 10 members of the Takoma Junction Task Force have signed the letter at takomajunction.com urging the council to continue with the RFP finalists. 10 members. 2 others have signaled to us privately that they will urge their council members to do so. That's a majority of the task force. I can give you the names of the signatories. I noticed that the signatories include Howard Cohn, one of the co-chairs. The other co-chair, Seth Grimes, said on November 16th on his blog, Takoma Junction progress has to date been in alignment with the recommendations of the Takoma Junction Task Force, a residents committee created in 2010. We agree with Seth here, and I hope you continue to reiterate this point. Once again, put a different way, if you think this RFP process was flawed because the task force was not properly respected, consider that a majority of the task force disagree. Their views are strong. Ellen Zavian, I quote, "In no way should the report be read as a reason to shut down the process or stop the RFP." Others offered insight into how the report came about. Jeff Trunzo, "It was a kind of menu of options, not the 10 Commandments." Barbara Mulbacher, "It was a compromise of ideas, leaving out a specific, this is what we want to do." Dan Seligman, this is an amber light for development. Howard Cohn, the co-chair, a smorgasbord of options. Take the issue of housing at the Junction. One suggestion is neither explicitly or included or excluded in the report, and that is namely housing. How do we interpret that? One thing true for many issues in the report is that the task force didn't agree on the issue, so it's been punted. Who picked up the ball and took responsibility? You did. The City Council with the RFP. That tells you that elected officials have taken the responsibility and that the process we have here is a good one. Laying aside all that, the developer finalists who have taken the time and energy to look at the RFP and the report want to do much of what the RFP suggests. And since the council is overseeing the process with developers, it will by definition be community-based. It begs the question, what more do you want? Finally, I want to stress how community-driven the process is that we have going right now, and I mean the whole community, not simply a part of it. The most legitimate process is one launched by elected officials, not any task force, however admirable their work, and I know you spent a lot of time on it. Council members have made this point indirectly, that the report was never formally adopted, and when members of the task force itself suggest that the RFP process is entirely okay, that underscores the legitimacy of what you are doing right now, and the secondary importance of the report to you, our elected representatives. Thank you to the council and staff for your time and energy. Bravo and onward.
Thank you.
I think this would be a good time to speak. My name is Fred Feinstein, Ward 3. I pretty fundamentally disagree with what was just said. And this is honestly the first time I've heard this particular argument. Respectfully, you cannot override the 18 months of work of a community task force where there were several hundred people participating and made very specific recommendations, which I know I in the community, I was not on the task force, but I certainly read those recommendations, and I know many of my friends and neighbors did as well. We thought this was the process. We thought these were the recommendations. To suggest that now, a year or two later, a petition, which is an admirable petition, I'm glad that people are being active on this issue. It's an ambiguous petition at best. It's a petition which I believe I stated the last time the council met. I agree with most of the petition. The one point I don't agree with is that the RFP process is the way we get to the stated values of that petition. But more fundamentally, the notion that by petition, members signing a petition, members of this process signing a petition, somehow nullifies this task force, this carefully considered task force report, the recommendations. I really think that that is not how community involvement works. I believe that one of the things that makes Takoma Park special and unique, and I believe I share this view with probably everyone here today, is that participation in activism is strongly valued. That's precisely why I think the Takoma Park recommendations, as they were carefully hammered out, as they were carefully articulated, should be what is guiding this process. And no, you cannot circulate, you cannot have certain members of that process after the fact come up and sign a petition and suggest that that somehow overrides and overrules the work of this task force. They made recommendations about what development should look like. They carefully examined options. They carefully examined many different possibilities, and then they made recommendations. And no, the recommendations did not include residential. Residential was considered, residential was discussed, and they were not included in the recommendations. And I, for one, when I read that, said, this task force seems to be recommending what the community wants and values. The notion that somehow or other we can now set aside this by the fact that any of the members of that task force now have a different idea, I really think that fundamentally distorts the process and fundamentally distorts the way community involvement community participation should be conducted and respected. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robert Lanza, 7215 Cedar Avenue. I'm also here today to urge the council to continue with the RFP process. I do not have a strong opinion on which contractor should be selected, except that the previous comments on flexibility are pretty important. If you have a flexible contractor, you'll get a flexible result. What I would not like to see is the council reopen the RFP process. You directed the contractors to respond to a solicitation. They responded. You selected 4 contractors on your short list. I'm going to make the assumption that you started that process with full intent on finishing the process and selecting a contractor. In terms of the development itself, again, I don't have any strong opinion about what should be there. I do have a strong opinion that the process should continue to its conclusion and getting a developer on staff to start the process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Amy Byrne. I live at 711 Hudson. There are lots of things I could talk about with, regarding the merits of development in the lot, of a brownfield infill lot, but tonight I want to talk about 3 things specifically. Urban design and placemaking, historic preservation and livability, because these are the things that I know about. From an urban design perspective, this lot has detracted from the community aesthetic that we feel when we walk into Old Town. When we walk through Old Town, the grid we see is programmed storefronts that rapidly change and create almost a musical rhythm with a new window, which makes the area feel very activated. Sadly, this is not the case in the Junction. There is literally a hole in our grid. Something must be there to create a defined street edge, because street edges create the feeling of place. By which pedestrians and shoppers can interact with each other. In essence, what urban designers call the bump factor, in which residents feel attracted to a place, walk there, experience community life by bumping into each other. There's no bump factor in the lot right now, or particularly in the Junction. What is exciting is that the zoning in the lot is NR, or neighborhood retail, which encourages retail space for patrons who can walk, bike, or take public transit there. So to make sure that those retail are only serving the local community. NR zoning is not for cars. From a historic perspective, a historic preservation perspective, the lot is not historic. What is historic are the beautiful and eclectic storefronts on Carroll and the large multi-story single-family homes on Sycamore, on Columbia, on Philadelphia, on Ethan Allen, and on Carroll. What excites me about developing this area is the opportunities for developers to create new, environmentally friendly buildings that fit within the aesthetic of Takoma Park's historic district, but further define the feeling of place within the Junction. Instead of fearing that buildings will be out of place, we can cite a local area that has successfully merged historic design of its community with a tried and true design aesthetic that comes with diverse building heights and facades. Mount Pleasant Road in Mount Pleasant, DC. If anyone has been there, beautiful buildings, 1.5-story facades, 2-story facades, and then further 3-story and 4-story facades. Now, we can't get more than about 3 stories in the district because of our height restrictions, and we're glad about that. But Mount Pleasant proves that diverse building heights make the street more interesting, more aesthetically pleasing, and give greater opportunities for business and resident tenants, as well as more amenities to the neighborhood. So I strongly encourage that we continue with the RFP process, because there is so many opportunities to make the area activated, more livable, and more walkable, which is something that's really important to Takoma Park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Emily Townsend. I live in Ward 2, and I'm both your neighbor and an officer of the board of TPSS Co-op. And because of that, I'm really aware of just how much the co-op means to Takoma Park. That's why I moved here. With work responsibilities and childcare and soccer games and active lives that many of our residents enjoy, all the other demands on our time, we at the co-op know that sometimes there doesn't seem to be enough hours in the day. And recently, to better serve our neighbors, we recently expanded our hours. We're now open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, and 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Sunday. While we do hope that increasing the hours will lead to increased business, we also did this as a member of the community responding to the needs of the community. We are a member-owned business, and we share the progressive spirit that makes Takoma Park a great place to be. We strive to give back to the overall community and not just our shoppers. As an example, when shoppers bring their own bags, they get a poker chip for each bag that they reuse to designate a 5-cent donation to organizations that reflect the values of the community. Last year, this bag reuse program gave over $1,700 to local organizations. This year, our shoppers will be able to direct their poker chip donations to Miriam's Kitchen, Crossroads Community Food Network, Capital Area Food Bank, Young Voices for the Planet, Real Food for Kids Montgomery, and our neighbor, the Takoma Park Volunteer Fire Department. In addition to these financial donations, we also make regular food donations to Crossroads Community Food Network, Shepherd's Table, and the Capital Area Food Bank. Finally, over the years, we have made donations to other charities and participated in fundraisers, community events, and other initiatives with a variety of greater Takoma Park organizations. We have flyers here to give more complete information about our giving back to the community. The flyers are on the table up front. We project that by expanding our store and increasing our sales, we will be able to substantially increase our community giving program. We can only guarantee our necessary expansion, however, if the co-op proposal is chosen for the Junction development. Other developers have their own priorities. That is why we urge the council to choose the co-op's development plan for Takoma Junction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bert. Sorry. Start over. My name is Bern Kelly, 307 Circle Avenue, Takoma Park, Maryland. I am a licensed landscape architect, an urban planner, a site planner, environmental planner, and I'll dig trenches for you too. So one of my concerns here tonight is in this process, we are seeing examples of a master planning process which took place, a task force, and a long-term reckoning and reasoning to get to an RFP. And now I see a divisiveness instead of an inclusiveness. And it's a little bit distressing because I don't think it's in keeping. I think it's in the spirit of democracy, but I think that there's some sense of urgency that maybe could be put aside and we could consider this project is going forward and will be developed. And the uses that we choose should be determined on a multiple of things, including the dream of any developer, a tenant anchor such as the co-op who is looking to lease more space. That's a really good thing. So if I were the developer, I certainly would be engaging the co-op at every step and supporting their goals, which I do see in the comments by the developers. They have taken time to do some of that. But I also don't see what we didn't do here at this site when this building and this city was involved with the development of this building, is I don't see feasibility of the site being taken into account. There are great trees, and there's a late Cyril, early climax forest on the downslope, but there's also an invasive set of woods and trees on the upslope, and there's rubble. Do we have geotechnical information? I don't know. But do the developers have that geotechnical information? Then good. Because as anybody knows, that the lower part of that site is rubble underneath that parking, and therefore not a covered as an underground parking, but a terraced parking at a lower level is part of the conversation. And getting rid of or reducing the parking on the side on Sycamore Street is very important to a lot of people, and multiple entrances is a situation that needs to be considered. So as some of you know, I've developed a site plan which I consider very functional, and it keeps the co-op in business throughout and gives the co-op all the options I think the co-op needs. And I think that is a primary goal, as well as moving forward with the RFPs. And I would like to see some guidelines created for the site development for the sake of the developers, for the convenience of the developers. And I offer one such plan. I'm actually meeting with the co-op tomorrow on the plan, and I would like to meet with the council to present it to them privately as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Seth Hassett. I'm a resident of 13 Sherman Avenue in Takoma Park, 10-year resident. This is my first time at a city council event, but I have, like many of my friends and neighbors, followed the RFP process with some excitement. For the past 10 years, I've been walking past the Takoma Junction area, the vacant parking lot, the auto shops, and really desperately looking for and waiting for some revitalization of that area. So I've been very excited to follow the process and very much support the completion of the RFP process. Have looked at the proposals and was very impressed with several of them, but particularly the Keystar Development Company, least impressed with the Community 3 development. And just to say that I certainly support, we are members of the co-op. We support the inclusion of the co-op in the redevelopment, but I would personally have strong concerns about the co-op being the lead in the redevelopment. It's just sort of a question of expertise and wanting to see the process brought to a timely completion and done in a smooth process. So again, thank you for all. I know you have tough decisions, but thank you for all your work and consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Diane Curran. I live at 22 Montgomery Avenue, a couple of blocks from the food co-op in the Junction. My husband and I have lived there for 30 years. We've raised 2 kids there. When I first moved in there, Turner Electric was in the building where the co-op is now. And over the years, it's been really great to see Takoma Junction grow and develop. The co-op was a tremendous addition to the neighborhood. We've watched new businesses come in recently, and now we're going to get a bakery on the corner. It's very exciting to see what's happening. I think the city's at a really important juncture here because there's not very many parcels of land that the city owns in important spots like the Junction. This is city-owned property right next to the food co-op, which is an anchor business in our community. I'm a great supporter of the co-op. I think it's really wonderful that we have been lucky enough to have a grocery store within walking distance of so many people who live in Takoma Park. And I would very much like to see this process include the co-op as a primary player, not just an entity that other proponents of different proposals are going to try to work with. I think it was a real mistake for the city to reject the co-op's proposal out of hand. After all, the co-op initially made a proposal to the city to expand the co-op in 2012. And I'm gathering the decision was, let's wait a couple years until we can get the bigger picture. But it doesn't seem fair at this point to have left the co-op out of it when they, it's difficult to get a grocery store to come in to a small space like that. We saw what happened to Harris Teeter down near the Metro. And this is an entity of real value to the city, and I would really like to see the co-op included as a proposer, not just an adjunct. I also just want to stress how important I think it is for the city to follow or at least analyze the task force recommendations. The civic process in this city is very important to us. We had a lot of volunteers spend a lot of time preparing a set of recommendations, and they make sense. It makes sense to have small-scale commercial development up there. This is a really busy intersection. I don't think it's necessarily the greatest use of city property to turn it over to residential use. Let's have some open space. Let's make sure there's enough parking for the junction, for all the businesses that we want to thrive at the junction. And let's make sure that it's as safe as possible a place for pedestrians. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Farb. I live on Devonshire Avenue, just off of Ethan Allen in Elm. I'd like to thank the council for all the work you've put into getting this process moving along. Revitalizing the junction is long overdue, and I feel like the process has been transparent and fair and has provided ample opportunity for submission of robust and thoughtful proposals. And I think there remains plenty of room to shape and mold those proposals to address most, if not all, of the concerns that many people have been raising. I just want to speak very briefly about one specific concern that I've heard raised that sort of hits close to home for me, which is the concern about some of the proposals leading to increased traffic, particularly the ones that include residential. I live just off Ethan Allen, so this issue, resonates with me a lot. I certainly don't want it to take even longer to get my daughter from our house to her best friend's house, a few houses down from the firehouse, or to get home from Nature Lab aftercare after a really long day for both of us. How many minutes have I spent sitting at the junction listening to verse after verse of how much longer is this going to take? But I have to say that I see the fear of increased traffic from development of the size that's being considered to be really a red herring. It's already bad, for one. It seems unlikely that it's going to get much worse from the types of proposals we're talking about. And I know that there are already efforts underway to improve pedestrian safety and access and to deal with the traffic. And as I said when I opened, I believe that the RFP process as designed will allow for accommodation of creative thinking and solutions to these types of concerns. So I'm going to just end before my time is up and say that I trust the process, and I urge the council to consider to continue trusting the process as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thanks to the council for taking this time. My name is Stuart Sarkozy-Bonacy, and I live at 25 Montgomery Avenue in Ward 3. And as a citizen of Takoma Park Foundation board member, soccer coach, father, like many others in the room, and a regular shopper at the co-op, I believe in the next step for the junction. And I appreciate the work that's been done so far with the task force, the council, the developers, and everyday citizens, including many of the people that are sitting in this room and speaking tonight. And I'm very excited about what's possible for our city. However, as a longtime community development practitioner in both rural and urban settings, I recognize how important this is and the opportunity we have before us, and I look at it in a little slightly different way. I've seen a lot of plans and spend nearly every day in some kind of community strategy efforts, and it is a difficult process sometimes. You can see that in the comments that are coming out tonight. But I honestly believe we can create a new placemaking landmark for Takoma Park that fills that blank space or that empty hole as referred to earlier, and that adds to what is here. I've also signed on to the letter of the petition referenced earlier, in part because I do think that we all have a lot in common to work with already. Do I think the process was perfect? No. Do I think that we should stop now? No. Can we find a middle way? I believe so. To be clear, I'm in favor of continuing the RFP process, and I believe there's a lot of merit in the plans we have already before us, though I personally could critique pieces of all of them. My wife has had to hear all of that already. I'm in favor of keeping the green space in the back that is there. I think that's super important. I'm in favor of more walkable retail space. I think the retail space is a real binder here. I am in favor of keeping and expanding the co-op. I love that place, and I love it's walkable for us. But I'm also very much in strong favor of mixed use and mixed income. So thank you again, and good luck.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jordy Hannum. I live at 108 Sherman Avenue in Ward 3, and I strongly support Takoma Junction redevelopment and moving forward with the existing process and not reopening it. I want to second the comments made by others on the aesthetic benefits. But I'd just like to say that I've only been here for 6 years, but in that time I've seen some important new developments in the community, whether it was Olive Lounge, Ace Hardware Store, and Republic. And I remember with those, and particularly with Republic, some opposition at the time, and kind of people saying this type of kind of bar restaurant belongs on 14th Street and not here in Takoma Park. But now, when you go in to there, or certainly Olive Lounge, they now kind of embody all the best of Takoma Park in terms of its diversity, in terms of its programming, whether it's kind of having 90-year-old blues legends or events on the importance of improved voting practices. And I have no doubt that as the process continues, that whatever comes at that space, if it does, that we will make it kind of uniquely our own, and so I urge the process to continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Rocco Casagrande, Ward 1. I'm the president of the Old Tacoma Business Association, and I understand you already had a statement by our executive director. I'd like to reinforce a couple things that was said with some of my experiences. In my history with the OTBA, I was able to talk to several businesses in the Junction, as well as those that have since left. We did exit interviews with a number of the businesses there. One of the issues that was cited with having a business in the Junction was a lack of foot traffic and also a lack of density. Development at this site would solve a lot of those problems. Another problem that is cited by one of our existing businesses in the Takoma Park region is that they are losing their lease and need another place to be, and they're targeting this Junction area as a place that they could relocate to. On a personal note, not as representing the OTBA, in my day job, one of the things I do is evaluate large proposals to the federal government, and we use an RFP process there. And one thing I'd like to urge you to do is to respect the RFP process, because it is a very good process for identifying projects that will actually come successfully to completion. Although a good proposal can't exactly tell you that the performer will be good, conversely, a confused proposal or proposal that lacks particular elements that you're seeking indicates certain problems that will occur in performance. I've seen that again and again in multi-million-dollar grants. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Colleen Clay, and I live at 800 Hayward Avenue here in Takoma Park. So I came tonight actually to support you all. I don't come down very much since I left the council, but this was an issue where I thought it was important to come and provide some support both to my council member, the mayor, and the other council members, but also to the city staff for the good and thoughtful work that they have done. We've been looking at the Takoma Junction site for a long time. I wish it had come up for redevelopment while I had been on the council, but it wasn't quite ripe yet. It is ripe now, and it is time to move forward with the process that you put out. It's very thoughtful. A couple things I want to say, as much to the whole group, is that we have an obligation here to serve the whole community. And I'm a member of the co-op. And I shop there to buy. There's things that I go there to buy in particular. I don't shop there for my whole family because honestly, it would really change my food budget to buy food for 5 people at the co-op. And I think that's something to think about, is that this is a city resource and an asset that we have, and we have to be thoughtful about the whole community. And it's related to about what the tax base is out at. It's also around the housing issue. We've had a shrinking population. So, an opportunity to me to add housing and more community members to Takoma Park, I think, is a positive thing, especially if you can add them in an area where we want to have more walkability and more safety in the community. And that's one thing that helps with that. The other thing is about, so many times we make decisions in Takoma Park because an opportunity has come up and there's some entity that is right there. But I think when we provide subsidies to businesses or when we look at developing a particular piece of park land because it happens to be what pops up as an opportunity, we also have to think about how we're distributing our resources equitably. And I think that's an issue here. There are a lot of businesses that we could really use a little extra support in Takoma Park. But I think when we make decisions that have that kind of effect, we have to be really thoughtful about it. We have an obligation to run an open and a fair proposal process, and my impression is that's what the city has done. And I want to say both to the council and to people in the community that how we engage this process is going to impact how we get developers to come and do work with us in the future. And while most of our housing land is developed, the fact is that we have a lot of commercial land that gets developed and redeveloped. And we're going to be wanting developers to have confidence in us that when we put out an RFP that we actually mean it. And when they make an investment in that means something and they can have some faith to engage with the city of Takoma Park. I said in the letter that I wrote to you that I don't envy you in this position. I know it's difficult, but I know that you'll do the right thing, and I want you to know that there are a lot of people in Takoma Park that support you in that.
Thank you.
Good evening, Robert Anderson, Woodland Avenue, about 200 yards from Takoma Junction, and I'm also a board member of the co-op. The co-op would like to clarify some of our positions and others' perceptions so that everyone can make decisions based upon accurate representations of your co-op. And I'd like to echo Colleen Clay's comment that I don't envy your position at this particular point.
I'm enjoying it.
While the co-op is nominally the anchor tenant in the development plans, that status has not come easily. None of the for-profit developers has been able to envision a viable solution for a loading dock, and some have forwarded clearly unworkable plans. Weekly, the co-op has approximately 11 semi-tractor trailer deliveries, as well as 30 deliveries from other vendors in smaller trucks. It's not uncommon to have as many as 5 trucks delivering at once. One proposal for street unloading in a cutout on Carroll is unworkable for many reasons, including the traffic impact on a narrow street, distance from the area to the store dock, and multiple deliveries at one time. Another for underground parking and loading will not accommodate the size, much less turning radius, of trailer trucks. Remember, that lot is limited on the income by the fire department parking lot right behind. There have been comments that developers haven't wanted to change their plans as they didn't want to spend more time and money on a project they did not yet have. It would seem to me that if they had an answer to any of our delivery issues, that would have been easily communicated to everyone. Lack of communication appears to be lack of a workable process. A second issue is that as a tenant, your community co-op is not in charge of its future. Takoma Old Town has lost 3 businesses since the beginning of the year. 2 of them had been there for over 30 years. One has specifically stated that their rent was increased substantially and they were given an ultimatum that they could not meet. The co-op could be in a similar situation if our future is at the mercy of a chosen developer and could be withdrawn. Or the co-op could be priced out of business, at least in the expanded area, at any time. Developers were asked by the council to contact the co-op to discuss solutions to its concerns, but only one did so. The 3 for-profit developers contacted the co-op only after a second request from the council, which was more in the form of a demand. One developer even stated in his written response to community questions that if he could not negotiate a resolution to his satisfaction with the co-op, he would replace the co-op in his development with another food store. In essence, the 3 see the co-op as an impediment to their plans and potential profits and are in no way willing partners. Finally, they have not put forth any viable proposal that would keep the co-op operational during construction. Community was being asked to choose a developer and then trust the developer to do the right thing for the community. Given the initial proposals, it is clear that the developers are trying to maximize their profit. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We are a profit-making organization as well. We believe in development of the Junction, but to do so, we believe that the co-op has the most responsible development plan, and we hope that you continue to consider it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Betsy Taylor. I live in Ward 1. I've been here for 28 years, and I walk to the co-op about 3 times a week. Thank you very much for listening, for being here, for having this process. And I'm a latecomer to the process. I just want to, and I appreciate the trade-offs between a predominantly residential approach and the fact that you've gone through this process, you've looked at a mixed-use development, and an expanded co-op, the tax benefits versus the direct benefits of something like the Child Care Center or Natural Spaces Community Gardens. And I just want to speak to those who are saying that asking you to put community over process. I've run private foundations for over 25 years. I've looked at thousands of proposals. Often the requests that come in for money, which is what I look at, the ones that are the most polished, that have the expected outcomes and the perfect presentation, do not necessarily end up being the best projects, the best. Often it's the ones that are a little unpolished, but actually represent heart. And I think that the council and the process made a mistake not including the co-op proposal, which I understand was less polished, perhaps. You're hearing from a large segment of the community that we would like you to include this proposal. Some are saying it's a violation of the process, respect the process, go with the RFP process. Others are saying you made a mistake, include that 5th proposal. I urge you to do that in the name of community rather than process. In the end, I don't know what will be best, but I do know that the co-op provides living wage jobs, health care. It supports local farms. It allows us to walk to get food and things that we don't have to get in our car and drive up carbon emissions by driving to the Giant or the Shoppers Food Warehouse or Whole Foods. Or Takoma Park. When I talk to my friends about living here and I talk about what's special, the co-op is always one of those things. And when I think about how easy it is to go with a residential, I'm not saying don't include residential, but it feels like the least community-oriented of the options. And I just urge you to really think about our legacy. This is one of the last pieces of public space. It's taxpayers who have made it available. And I just urge you to reconsider and not consider it a violation of the process to include the co-op proposal and work with the co-op to see what we can do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Paul Krastowski, 7708 Takoma Avenue. About a week ago, we were all celebrating the fact that we were chosen as a semifinalist in the Georgetown Energy Competition. About a month before then, we were all celebrating the fact that we achieved Sustainable Maryland certification. Sustainability, in fact, was one of the criteria in the RFPs for this project. However, none of the RFPs that have been submitted really look terribly sustainable. I have been asking this council and asking the city since day one to provide a professional evaluation of the sustainability of each of these proposals. However, none has been forthcoming. As an environmental professional who does this work on a daily basis, I can clearly tell you that although some of these projects do have green features, none of them actually meet a true criterion of sustainability. I really think it's time for the city to put its money where its mouth is and require that whatever be done on this site be environmentally sustainable. Let's step up to the plate. Let's say no net greenhouse gas increases. Let's say no stormwater runoff increases. Let's make this a truly sustainable project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Steve Davies, 6609 Westmoreland Avenue, Ward 3. I wanted to follow Paul Krastowski because I knew he'd say something I agreed with. I do believe that you should continue with this RFP process. You started it, apparently you started with your eyes open. You knew what you were getting into. I think you need to finish it. One of the main reasons being what Colleen Clay said, which is that when developers come to us in the future, they need to have some assurance that we're actually going to do what we say we're going to do. I am a longtime member of the co-op. I shop there pretty frequently, and I feel that any development proposal needs to very carefully take into consideration the needs of the co-op. I don't want to see their business suffer during construction. So any accommodations that need to be made to get goods to the co-op should be made. 100% sustainable, that sounds good to me. I think that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Joe Edgell, 1000 block of Elm Avenue. I wanted to thank you, and particularly the city manager, for starting this RFP process and moving forward. As I've noted before to the council, I'm not sure a parking lot really is doing anybody any good. And I think for once, we're actually beginning to see the demand of the parking lot once we've started actually charging people. Suddenly, no one wants to park there. So it's not really doing much at all anymore except sitting empty. The co-op, while a good business, and I shop there pretty much weekly to bi-weekly, they're still a business. And I have some concerns about my tax dollars and our city resources going to favor one business over another. An open grants process that businesses can compete for, that's fine. But the co-op wants to have some special rules for them that other businesses don't get the benefit of. And that just doesn't seem fair to me. The co-op definitely should have an opportunity to be a business there, and I'd hate to see them leave Takoma Park, but they shouldn't get this special preference. In addition to that, I wanted to note to the council a couple of other things. Traffic has been one of the big things that have been noted as a concern for development. And mixed use specifically was noted as a fuel for traffic. And in fact, mixed use development is what usually cuts down on traffic. In fact, if you focus on a transit-oriented development, for example, if you didn't build any new parking spaces for the housing that's there, build enough for the co-op, maybe build a few for the businesses that are there, but the people who rent or buy those, no, they don't get any parking. There's bike share, there's buses, and there's walking. It's 3/4 of a mile from the metro. It's not going to contribute at all to traffic. In fact, if anything, it's going to reduce traffic from the existing situation. One of the things that I've found interesting is that many of the people who have criticized mixed-use development are also the same people that have, on various occasions, have criticized the incredibly high rising costs of housing in Takoma Park. And one of the surest ways to reduce the cost of housing is to increase its supply. And so if we can add a few additional units of housing, maybe we can help keep down some of those rising costs that keep gentrifying the city. Everyone decries gentrification, but then when we have an option, a solution to bring some more housing to Takoma Park to help reduce that gentrification, people oppose it. So I encourage you to move forward with the RFP process. I continue to support a mixed-use development, something where people can walk to the businesses from their apartments upstairs, and to not let the perfect be the enemy of the very good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Richard Levine on Cedar Avenue, of course, a longtime resident, and I was just going to sit here and listen and try to be informed, but I feel I have to respond for somebody to say the co-op is not special. The co-op is the heart and soul of our community in many ways, and it's not just any business. It's a business in which we all share ownership. And I'm very much concerned that the future of the co-op be ensured, and that the co-op, I think one of the best ways to do it is to have the co-op become a participant and a very active participant in any redevelopment project that is going to be enacted. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Tony Camilli, and I, along with my wife, 2 kids, cat and dog, live on Tulip Avenue. We recently moved to Takoma Park because we were attracted to the area based upon a lot of what you see here, the community atmosphere, the community input, the charm, frankly, was a huge attraction to us, and a lot of the neighborhood amenities like the co-op and some of the other businesses that we patronize regularly. First, let me say that I'm very thankful to see that the council is taking the right steps in issuing the RFP and trying to move forward. I'm not an urban planner or developer by any means. I certainly don't have the level of expertise that Joe had talked about here earlier with regard to mixed-use development. But in my professional life, I've lived in a number of countries. I've traveled to a number of cities and lived in a number of cities. And I tend to think that I have a pretty good idea of what is a nice-looking place and what makes a place charming when you see it. And I think that the area around the co-op is unfortunately lacking that charm that really symbolizes the rest of Takoma Park and is one of the main attractions of it. I've been following this matter for many months now, and I'm sometimes disheartened to hear how some neighbors are attempting to stall or thwart the development of the project. And I mean no ill will towards those folks, but and I recognize the legitimate concerns. But to me, the best thing that can happen to you on the council is to listen to ideas about solving problems rather than just hearing people complain about, well, this development's going to produce problems. Everyone knows the development's going to produce problems in some way, shape, or form. The co-op's going to have some business issues during operations during the redevelopment. It's probably going to increase traffic in the short term, might decrease in the long term, depending on how the project progresses. So there's going to be problems, no matter what you decide to do. But to me, if I were in your shoes, I'd be more interested in listening to ideas and solutions than just hearing about all the problems this might generate. So the council, acting through your task force in this matter, you made a wise decision to kind of put this idea on the plate saying you want to develop this. And I don't think that, in my opinion, I don't think you should waste too much time and resources focusing on trying to please everybody in Takoma Park, because as you know about politics, the first rule is you can't please everybody. And there are going to be some people that are going to be dissatisfied with no matter what decision you make. So you all recognize that in your roles. But I think it's hard to argue that no development is better than choice number 1 versus choice number 2 versus choice number 3, et cetera. I think most people would agree that the current state of that lot and that development, that parcel there, is probably not the most optimal solution. So I personally implore you as the council to move ahead with the RFP process. And no matter what decision you make, it's going to be controversial. But I just ask that you move forward and take the steps that you keep following the path you've laid down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and one more thing, not unrelated to this. Please build the dog park.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Berger from the Co-op, and I was not going to say anything tonight, but I was very concerned about something you just heard about the Co-op asking for special favors or whatever that was about. I have no idea, and you, having received our financial information, know that we are not asking for financial favors. We are not asking for any kind of special treatment. We can be up there with the big players just as well as all the others. The only thing that we are asking for that's special is that we're the only ones whose future depends entirely on what happens now. So we're asking for consideration of those 3 things, of access to the loading dock. You've heard it enough times, I don't have to repeat it all. Those are the special things we're asking for. But as far as whatever that gentleman was referring to, you know as much as I do about that. We haven't asked for anything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Joe, we're going back up.
Somebody who knows, yes, there's a switch on that thing that'll raise it up and down 8 inches if it's not the right height.
Jeff Trunza, 119 Sherman Avenue. Before I start, I want to say thank you, Tony, for speaking. I did not coach the Camillis at all, but Sarah and I worked together at FDA, and I'm thrilled to find, I want to welcome you to Takoma Park, and I'm thrilled that you feel this way. I think thinking about what someone who arrives in the community with fresh eyes is somewhat revealing. So, Mayor, Council members, City Manager, and City staff, thank you for launching and maintaining a thoughtful, multi-year effort to redevelop Takoma Junction by engaging the community and stakeholders in an open process. It was a great honor to be selected for the Takoma Junction Task Force, and I want to recognize the tremendous effort, commitment, and passion that each member brought to this very important work.
Takoma Junction today is a better place than it was in 2012 because of the work of the task force. So thank you. I also want to recognize our city manager, Brian Kenner, who has done a tremendous job with bringing his expertise in redevelopment to moving us off the dime and getting us to the point where we are today. So, in my view, here's where we are today. We know two facts about two critical components of Takoma Junction redevelopment, which we previously did not know. Number one, and I think these are both equally important, our co-op has stated that they must expand, and soon, and they have begun aligning their organization and adding expertise and resources to their roster in order to be in a position to say yes to the question, can you meet your responsibilities to transition to an expanded operation? That alone is a sigh of relief from me. Number two, we also learned that very high-quality developers are interested in working with our community to turn our ideas and concepts into a high-quality building containing first and foremost the co-op and sufficient complementary street-front commercial space to transform this area. This is new information and was not the case in 2012, nor for as long as the city has owned the property. So, knowing those two things, the vitality of our business in Takoma Junction is hindered by the lack of continuity of storefronts from our fire station to Sycamore Avenue. This project is our opportunity to correct this problem. Our task force report noted the issue of desolation of the city lot and the lack of storefronts, and this was mentioned frequently in customer intercept surveys that we conducted. Some folks use more colorful language than I am, and you can ask Roger Slagle about some of those anecdotes. My fellow board members and staff at the Old Takoma Business Association have also spoke about what some of the issues are and what we would like to see happen. My own aspirations and vision for Takoma Junction include moving ahead while the time is right and getting the job done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Catherine Tunis. I wanted to provide a little bit of a historical perspective. I wanted to say historical very carefully so that it didn't sound hysterical. In that years ago we had the Open Space Committee and we looked at the wooded area behind the co-op, behind the lot, and considered that as a possible conservation area. If I recall, the judgment we made at that point in time was that we didn't need to make it a conservation area because it was too small and too steep to have housing on there. And I'm sort of dismayed now to see several of the proposals having housing on that steep slope. And so I would oppose any development of those lots or cutting down of those trees. I do want to say that the co-op has done CPR on the Takoma Junction. Since they have moved there, it has gone from a sort of desolate desert, commercial desert, to something that is a bit of an anchor, more of a vital area. It's not quite Old Town, but it's not quite the pawn shop on New Hampshire Avenue either. Historic Takoma has moved there, and we've had a number of other shops come in and serving the community. And so I really want to say that they are a part of the community, and we should consider them alongside the other proposals that you have. It was their request to develop on the lot that actually started this whole process. So I think that they do deserve some consideration, and we should be able to look at their proposal side by side with the other proposals so that we can make an evaluation on that. The question, I keep hearing people talk about an RFP. When we had a meeting a month or so ago, the mayor told us that this wasn't necessarily an RFP, that they were going to choose a developer who would then go and develop the lot, that this was a request for sort of a vision where it would be a start of a discussion in the community of what we wanted that area to be like, what we wanted to happen there. I don't think that we have had that larger discussion yet, so again, I'm hoping that we're not going to just choose a developer and go for developing. I wanted to ask a little bit, and maybe this is me confused, I've been busy with other things, but I'm a little confused about the structure of this. I heard the city manager say that the city is not selling the lot to a developer. So do the developers, are they getting a long-term lease on the lot? Will they be owning the building? And everyone else there will be a tenant? And I would ask you if you can consider other structures, such as an owner-occupied. Perhaps one of the biggest concerns the co-op has is they don't want to be a tenant. They would like to be an owner. Could there be some kind of a partnership in which there is a development that brings that anchor tenant in and develops for that customer as well as any other customers that there may be? I think this would bolster the stability in that area as well as the thing. And I hear that beeping at me, but I also did want to say that I like the suggestion I heard at the council meeting for having more discussion rather than just people talking to the council. So perhaps we might want to consider a charrette or some other format. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize. Just
go ahead.
So, as I was sort of stating last night, everything is still on the table. There is no, because there's no identified yet decision that the council has made. So the city can sell the property, the city cannot sell the property. The city can lease the property, the city cannot lease the property. There are all options that are still open, so there's been no decision that has been made as to what's going to happen on the site. So everything is still open, including the opportunity for the co-op to be to have some sort of ownership and sort of ownership interest potentially in whatever development or whatever happens if something does happen on the site.
Thank you. Well, that's good to hear. The person, I didn't catch her name, but I liked very much what she had to say about keeping the discussion open. And not being, excuse me, I'm Susan Schreiber. I live at 7323 Willow Avenue. I've lived on Maple Avenue. I've lived on Sherman Avenue. And I've lived in Takoma Park for 35 years. My son and his toddler are living with me and will be growing up as a new generation. And I must say that a concern that many of us who have children now who are adults is wondering whether they would ever be able to live in Takoma Park. And I know I'm not the only person who feels that way. I was interested in Tony Camilli's point about providing opportunities for people to come in who may not be able to buy a house here. But if this were to be affordable housing, I must say I think I'd feel quite differently about it. If it's market rate, which is what all the DC side apartments are going to be, to me that's less attractive and provides less of a service and if we had half affordable housing, whatever it is, but that doesn't seem to have been really addressed in the RFPs, or I haven't noticed it. I want to say that people who are questioning this process, it's not that people are not for revitalization of the junction. In fact, I think everybody's very excited about what could potentially be there and the importance of doing something. None of us want that parking lot to be there. So I think it's important not to cast people who've been raising questions as people who are anti-development, because that's not at all the case. We do want the process to move forward. We do want the kind of vision and broad thinking that can be part of the process to really continue. And again, I would be great if we can have some real discussion and be able to get some perspective from individual council members as this process goes. One possibility would be to move forward with the RFP process and decline the other proposals and adopt the co-op vision. That would be moving forward. Another possibility might be to put out an RFP request that says we've got some nice proposals for residential, because that's what developers do. If all you've got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and they really like to do apartments. But supposing we put out an RFP request that said we'd like to see some proposals that don't include housing and that don't cede so much of the lot to residential and use it for some other community resources as well as retail. I think there are a variety of things that can be done that will continue to move the process forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pearsall. I'm Vice President of Historic Tacoma, and I also have some suggestions for the city that could maybe help clarify things for the decision-making process. And it kind of stems with the fact that, one of the many problems with the RFP was that the co-op was not mentioned as an anchor tenant. And that was brought up by one of the developers, but it really has been an underlying problem with this whole process because the needs of the co-op, which is incredibly important as a stable and existing historic business there that we support, have never really been seriously addressed. And I know the city has called for outreach, but it really seems to me it's not enough to just ask what kind of outreach are you doing. So I thought about it and I figured that a really positive thing would be for the city to actually request that the developers take their concepts, which are important, and all the variations of those concepts, and actually specify in writing how they satisfy the basic needs of this important existing business in writing. So it would be the loading dock, and it would be parking, and it would be business continuity, and then ask the co-op to critique that or to respond to it, because then you would have a solid product that you guys can use in decision-making process right away, regardless of opening it up, or you can do a plethora of things. But you have these folks now, and we've never asked the right question, and we keep dancing around it. And so I think it would be extremely helpful. The concepts are pretty well explored right now, and because there's a limitation on what you can do in such a small area, I would think that the developers have a pretty good handle on what they actually can do. So some developers might have, one way of doing it. Others may have, 3 or 4. Fine. Lay it all out. How are your concepts going to further these needs? How are you going to meet them for each of these? And then we can actually see what's going on. I think that would be very helpful to you. And I really urge you to do it because we're not getting anywhere. And that, we do need to make some important decisions for primarily the benchmark seems to me to be, how does it work with the co-op? Of course, it has to work with the neighborhood, it has to work with the community, but it certainly has to work with the co-op. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Steve Shapiro, Willow Avenue. Compared to some folks, I'm a relative newcomer to Takoma Park, and compared to some, I'm not. I'm a brand newcomer to this issue, although I've spoken to this council before about the traffic and the dreadful traffic situation at Takoma Junction. I'd like to focus principally on the issue of the co-op. I am not a fan of our co-op, and I'm a biggest fan of the idea of a co-op. I liked the co-op when they first opened up on Sligo, and when they were open in Silver Spring, I think it was Grub Road, I shopped there. At the Takoma Park Co-op, I, like some others that I've not heard speak this evening, don't care for their selection, don't care for their produce, but there are reasons for whatever it is, but it is what it is. But I have seen in recent years co-ops that were exciting places to shop, prices were good, and a good heart of a community. I'm thinking of 2 places. One is in Northampton, Massachusetts, where my sister lives and shops, and the other is the co-op in Park Slope, Brooklyn. And if you've not been to the one in Park Slope, Brooklyn, it's been written up many times in the New York Times. It's worth visiting. People participate, and it is a rocking place. I do believe that our co-op in principle is one of the best things that can make Takoma Park a great place to live. And expansion would certainly be part of the key, where they could have a better selection and, frankly, competitive prices with good goods. That said, I am, again, in principle, fully supportive of the idea of our co-op, and despite its shortcomings, hope to see it expand and become a great community center. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Earl, and I live on Grant Avenue, and I've been there for over 10 years. There were many reasons that my wife and I chose to live in Takoma Park. The strong sense of community, its progressive values, and commitment to sustainability, and the walkability of the city. We could have bought a much larger house had we decided to live right outside the Beltway, but we wanted to live in close, be able to walk to the farmer's market, the restaurants in town, the co-op. And so therefore we settled for a much smaller house. But we enjoy living close to the center. We didn't want our lives to revolve around the automobile. By developing the Junction and bringing in more retail space and residential, we'll be moving closer to the city's goals on sustainability. People have more reasons to get outside and to walk to stores, spending their money in local businesses, and improving their own health and well-being. Often when I walk to the downtown, I bump into neighbors, I bump into friends, enhance that sense of community, and remind myself why I live here in Takoma Park. Also, more and more recent college graduates are seeking to live in communities that offer amenities that allow them to live without a car. They're saddled with lots of college debt. A car is one more thing that, if they can live without, is a great thing. So they're looking for retail, they're looking for entertainment options that they can walk to or bike to. So by offering more retail options at the Takoma Junction, Takoma Park will become a more welcoming community to these young professionals, and this will further benefit the rest of the downtown commercial center. So I urge the members of the City Council to move forward with the RFP process for the future development of the Takoma Junction, and I certainly hope that the co-op is part of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is David Paris, Larch Avenue. I think the council has to be careful not to kill the goose that laid the golden egg. My concern with the process is from the start. The RFP process sought an alternative to the co-op proposal. It sought to be transformative. It gave weight to the experience in finance and planning of development projects. It didn't have specificity about the fundamental needs of the co-op, the loading dock, the needs of the co-op, and a business plan for continuity of operation. So I think the deck was stacked against the co-op, and that you now need to take some sort of action to remediate that. I mean, the whole notion of there being weight given to previous development experience, how was the co-op going to compete with that? Unless they were told of this being an important criteria and given the opportunity and credit for hiring qualified advisors, which I believe they're doing. I think as a result of this, you need to take some sort of appropriate action. And another problem I've had with the process was the premature discussion of the co-op's financial fitness at a time when the financial fitness of the other developers was off the table. And a number of statements that were made during that session, which was in October, when, as a matter of fact, the co-op representatives were not present, about the co-op's lack of capability, sophistication, that they would need to be walked through the process. There was all this speculation going on about how they might go out of business if they expanded. And we're we're talking here about the solid part of everything up there is the co-op. The 4 proposals you've received are speculative. They do not have any solid signed tenants other than the possibility of the co-op, of course. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor and the council. My name is Margie Omero. I live at 18 Montgomery Avenue. I'm new to this process. This is my first meeting. I've been following online, and I'm new to Takoma Park. I've lived here for a year. I see some of my new neighbors here who I've grown to immediately love and respect. And so I'm not an expert like others here on development or on environmental sustainability. I am an expert in public opinion, specifically with candidates and elected officials. So, and maybe this is something that folks are already doing, but using this meeting has been great in terms of hearing people's perspectives, but also finding other ways to gauge public sentiment for folks who can't make it to meetings for whatever reason, or maybe are following a little bit less closely, because even those less informed still have opinions that are valid as voters and as taxpayers, and importantly, as shoppers and people who are going to be using the space. And I'll also add briefly about my perspective as a newer resident. I appreciate that there are likely maybe not tensions, but differences of perspectives between folks who have lived here a long time and folks who have moved here more recently. But I think some of the things that everybody shares is interest in protecting the co-op. I mean, that's something that was one of the first things I did when I moved to the neighborhood, was to become a member of the co-op. And I've never yet made it to the third Thursday discount day, but I still go all the other days. I guess other people are in that same boat. And so people, I think, are uniformly want to, fix the blight of the parking lot, protect the co-op, and also and protect what we all love about Takoma Park, which I think lots of people share those values, but also have something to really draw foot traffic up to that part of town. And I think new residential spaces would help with that. I mean, it would help when I listen to other folks who also want to come move here. A lack of housing stock is a huge issue for many. You also have a lot of people moving here with young children. You don't have a lot of preschool spaces for people in Takoma Park. So that is something that really comes up very frequently. I haven't heard it mentioned much tonight. So the opportunity to have more of that is something that I think really fills a need. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Neil Cohen, 13 Columbia Avenue. I want to thank the City Council, the Mayor, for their patience and their willingness to engage in this community discussion. I want to thank the City Manager and wish him well in his new adventures in the city in D.C., and thank him for getting this RFP process underway. I think it's been done well, and what an RFP process does is it says to the world at large, give us your best ideas. We're open. Here's the criteria. Give us your best ideas. And what you got were 7 proposals, of which the city staff recommended and you selected 4 finalists. And there are some pretty good ideas in there. They're concepts. They will evolve. And I think that they represent ideas that a lot of people in the community want to see and on all sides of this issue, want to see vitality. They want to see walkability. They want to see sustainability. They want to see the co-op thrive as one of many for-profit stores. There's Mad Fitness, there's the Spring Mills, there's the yoga place, and there's many businesses that have folded there that you heard from Old Town Business Association that need that vitality. So the co-op is important, but it's not the only business at the co-op, at the Junction. And for those of you who attended the financial presentation put on by our city manager a few weeks ago, we learned that at the time that the City Council was being a steward of our city, that in the written proposal, it said the co-op had proposed that they get the property for $0, whereas other developers had put forth various degrees of market rate prices. And I think it is the city's obligation to consider the needs of the city at large and all of the communities that it represents, not solely the co-op community, which is an important, but it's not the only community. There are faith communities, there are preschool communities, there are interest communities, there are sports communities. Any one of them would love to have that space for free. The city has to be a steward of our money. It has to be a steward of the city's reputation, its willingness to engage with developers. In many ways, this is very much a Ward 6 issue because the development in a Ward 5 that has to happen at Takoma Langley Crossings when hopefully the Purple Line is built. We have to have credibility. We can't just keep going back to developers with a wish list. And in terms of the issues that have been raised by the co-op about the loading dock, I think these are manageable issues. And I think that the city has, and the council has shown an immense willingness to push the developers to engage with the co-op and to find a way to get to yes. And I thank the council for its persistence in trying to get to yes. Now is the time, okay? We are caught up in rising property values across the D.C. region. Pressures will only increase to make this a bigger and more out-of-scope proposal. What you have now is in scope. It's in keeping with the historic nature and the heights in the district. And we just want to thank you for this inclusive process, and we urge you to move forward and make the best decision as the steward of our city. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Angie Nichols-Friedman. I live in Ward 2 at 415 Boyd Avenue. First of all, I'd like to thank the council for initiating this process to revitalize the Junction area. I'm super excited about the possibilities for development and revitalization in the area, especially after hearing some of the speakers tonight talk about this concept of placemaking, which is currently lacking in that area. I have lived in Takoma Park for 5.5 years, and I was drawn to this community because of the city's small-town character and strong social fabric. But at the same time, I feel like Takoma Park is bursting with pent-up demand for high-quality, locally owned services and amenities, and I fully support the city's vision to revitalize this area. I also think that the council rightly recognizes that such development requires investment from developers with experience and resources to really transform the area and no longer maintain the status quo. I support moving forward with the current process, which seems to me a fair and effective and transparent means of assessing trade-offs and not putting the interests of any single entity ahead of the interests of the community at large. It is my hope that the co-op, the city, the chosen developer, and other stakeholders can work together to develop and implement a design that meets the city's objectives to be a stimulus to the commercial district and promote locally owned and independent businesses in the Junction. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good evening. Diana Cohn, 16 Jefferson Avenue, and also president of Historic Takoma. There are a great many opinions and suggestions and requests and views for developing the Junction, and some of it's disagreement, but I'm suggesting that it's worth taking a look at where we do agree, and many of those points turn up again and again. The co-op is the centerpiece. Accommodating the co-op during a possible construction, providing continued parking for not just co-op customers but the rest of the customers to the other businesses at the Junction, a traffic study that is as broadly laid out as we can make that be, and of course development incompatible with the historic nature. And I'm asking that the council, as they move forward in this process, gives particular consideration to those points of agreement, and to not get as hung up in where the disagreements are, but to remember what the points of consensus are, and have the process going forward find solutions that can further those consensus points. The RFP that began this whole process is a strange animal, at least to me, and I think to lots of other folks, and we don't understand how it works, and that makes us anxious. But I think that the process of redeveloping the junction is actually wider than just implementing the RFP. And so I urge you to consider creating as broad a process as possible that will lead to the best outcome. And I'm Historic Tacoma, so I will say that the archive photos from 1980 show a parking lot that looks pretty much the way it does now. A lot of other amenities and things at the junction. And I look forward to the day when there will be a set of photographs of a redeveloped junction that can add to the new archives.
Hello, my name is David Zuckerman. I'm a current board member at TPSS. I do not actually live in Takoma Park, but I do work here. I did want to clarify an earlier comment that someone else had made regarding the co-op asking to have the lot for free. This is not true. In I guess an earlier proposal, the co-op did suggest adding in additional community space in exchange for the lot being at a reduced price. But our current proposal has that community space in there, as well as a price that is comparable to what the other developers are also suggesting. So I just wanted to clarify that point. And the lady who stepped out earlier made a comment about our Super Thursday. I did also wanted to do a little bit of a public service announcement that has actually gone away, in the sense of the co-op trying to respond to what we see as allowing our customers, who are our member owners, to have a greater opportunity to use the benefits and the financial benefit they receive from becoming a member of the co-op. So now co-op members are allowed to use that benefit, that 10% discount, on any day of their choosing. And so that is a different, we've responded to our customers' suggestions in that way. So just wanted to clarify those 2 points. Thank you. And thank everyone for the support of the co-op that they've shown in their comments today.
Going once, going twice. Thank you all very much, and a reminder that we will have a second one of these Tuesday, February 3rd.
Catching fireflies in a jar in the back of our enormous yard when we were heroes. When you didn't cry at all from that un-Superman-like fall out of that willow tree. Catch the honeysuckle on our tongues with expert technique. The super secret sister knowledge. Running half the block with me. Ice cream man is round in Buck Creek. Mr. faster, 2 push-ups, please. Again, again, I want to do it again. Simple laugh and everlasting again. Disco scene in our Sergio Valente jeans, pink piping matching hats, don't fall off of your 5-inch stacks, and you didn't flinch when Jeffrey first kissed you. I'll be Sunny, you be Cher, 'cause you got the better hair. Barry Manilow can so sing. The Moonstone Castle Mysteries, Volume 40, Carolyn Key. Betsy Drew rules the world.